welcome aboard. We are about to take a 20-minute journey through Edinburgh's dramatic history, from the planned elegance of the new town to the towering medieval grit of the old town. Please feel free to hop off at any of our designated stops to explore the highlights, and simply hop back on when you're ready to continue. Our journey begins at Waterloo Place, a majestic gateway that marks the boundary between Edinburgh's old and new towns. Look up immediately to your left at the magnificent hill towering over us, Calton Hill. Calton Hill is often called the Athens of the North because of the remarkable collection of neoclassical monuments clustered at its summit. You can see the circular tower of the Nelson Monument and the unfinished colonnades of the National Monument, modeled on the Parthenon in Athens. While it was intended to commemorate soldiers lost during the Napoleonic Wars, funds ran out, earning it the affectionate, if slightly cynical, local nickname of Edinburgh's Disgrace. As we pull out, notice the impressive architecture around us. We are at the start of Edinburgh's new town, a stunning example of Georgian planning built in the late 18th and early 19th centuries to relieve the overcrowding of the old town. Highlights here: Calton Hill, the National Monument, and the Grand General Register House, the oldest custom-built archive in the UK, completed in 1788. We now drive through the new town's symmetrical, planned elegance. You are traveling along streets designed in stark contrast to the organic, winding chaos of the old town. We arrive at St. Andrew's Square. This square is one of the new town's defining features. In the center, you'll see the tall column topped with a statue of Henry Dundas, the first Viscount Melville. Dundas was one of Scotland's most powerful politicians, though his legacy is complex and controversial today due to his role in delaying the abolition of the slave trade. The surrounding streets are the heart of Edinburgh's financial district. Look down George Street, which runs perpendicular to Princes Street. It was designed as the central axis of the new town, lined with elegant shops, boutiques, and grand Georgian office buildings. You'll see the Scott Monument, a Gothic spire dedicated to author Sir Walter Scott, dominating the skyline to the south. Highlights here: the new town's Georgian architecture and the monument to Henry Dundas. As we turn southwest, we drive along Princes Street, with Princes Street Gardens opening up on our left. This beautiful green valley was once the Norloch, a defensive and, let's be honest, disgustingly polluted body of water that protected the old town. It was drained when the new town was built. This contrast highlights the city's unique geography. The old town sits on the ridge to the south, and the new town lies on the flat plain to the north. We pass St. Cuthbert's Church near our Lothian Road stop. This churchyard, though surrounded by city bustle, offers a quiet green space and some incredible views of the Castle Rock. This area is a major transit and cultural hub, with connections to the West End. This stop is also a gateway to local gems like Dean Village and St. Bernard's Well, if you are looking for an off-route exploration of the beautiful water of Leith Walkway. Prepare for a beautiful ascent. We are now climbing the mound, which literally connects the old and new towns. The mound itself is not a natural feature. It was formed entirely from millions of tons of excavated earth and debris dumped into the Norloch Valley during the new town's construction. This stop is a cultural nexus. The buildings on the mound are home to the National Galleries of Scotland and the Royal Scottish Academy. These galleries are a must-visit, housing Scotland's collection of fine art. Most importantly, look up to the west. Towering over the city, perched dramatically on an extinct volcano, is Edinburgh Castle. The castle dominates every view and is the oldest part of the city. You are now at the foot of the Royal Mile, which runs straight from the castle gates to the Palace of Holyrood House. Highlights here: National Galleries of Scotland, the Castle View, and the start of the Royal Mile, Lawn Market, High Street. The Camera Obscura and World of Illusions is also right here at the top of the mile. We are now deep in the old town. The road we are on, George IV Bridge, is itself a feat of Victorian engineering, built to span the deep valleys of the Grassmarket and the Cowgate below. This stop places you at the heart of historic Edinburgh. Just steps away, you will find St. Giles Cathedral. Look for its spectacular crown-shaped spire. Often called the Mother Church of Presbyterianism, this is where the famous reformer John Knox once preached. Victoria Street, look down to your right. This colorful, curved, two-tier street is widely rumored to be the inspiration for Diagon Alley in the Harry Potter books. It's packed with unique boutiques and shops. Greyfriars Kirkyard, located across the street, this is one of the most atmospheric places in the city. Its tombstones hold the names of many notables, and some names, like Thomas Riddle, that may have inspired Harry Potter's dark characters. And of course, at the Kirkyard Gate, you will find the statue of Greyfriars Bobby. This small Skye Terrier famously guarded his master's grave for 14 years in the 19th century, embodying the loyalty of the Edinburgh. Highlights here, Greyfriars Bobby, St. Giles Cathedral, and the Harry Potter-inspiring Victoria Street. After a quick pass by the Chalmers Centre on Lauriston Place, we make a dramatic descent into the Grassmarket. The Grassmarket is one of Edinburgh's most historic and evocative squares. In the Middle Ages, it was a busy marketplace for livestock and grain. However, it is perhaps most famous for its darker history. It served as the city's primary execution site up until 1784. Today, a subtle circle of cobblestones marks the spot where the gallows once stood. Despite its somber past, the Grassmarket is now a bustling, vibrant area full of traditional pubs and restaurants, many of which were once coaching inns. From this vantage point, you have one of the most spectacular, dramatic, and intimidating views of Edinburgh Castle towering directly above you. You can clearly see the sheer drop of the castle rock. This area is essential for understanding the geography and the historical claustrophobia of the old town. Highlights here, the dramatic view of Edinburgh Castle, historic pubs, and the marker for the old gallows site. Your final stop brings us to Chambers Street, directly outside the magnificent National Museum of Scotland. This vast, modern yet historic institution is one of the best museums in the UK, housing incredible collections ranging from Scottish history and natural history to science and technology. You can see everything from the famous Dolly the sheep to artifacts from the Egyptian pyramids. This stop also places you perfectly for the nearby National Museum of Scotland, as well as the Museum of Edinburgh and Greyfriars Kirkyard, which we passed earlier on the bridge. From here, we continue our journey, looping back toward the George IV Bridge and heading north, passing back over the mound and through the new town, bringing us full circle to Waterloo Place. The story of Edinburgh begins not with a building, but with a rock. An extinct volcano, a plug of hard dolerite carved by glacier, Castle Rock. For thousands of years, this towering crag was recognized as a perfect defensive position, defining the landscape and the destiny of the city that grew beneath it. The earliest signs of habitation date back to the Iron Age, a time when this strategic height was a fortified hillfort. Early medieval poetry refers to the site as Din Eidig, the stronghold of Eidig. In the 7th century, the Anglo-Saxons seized the area, appending the Old English word borough, meaning fort or walled settlement, to the local name, giving us Edinburgh. It wasn't until the 11th century that the site became unequivocally royal. King Malcolm III built a castle here, and his wife, Queen Margaret, later St. Margaret, died in the fortress in 1093. Her son, King David I, founded the tiny St. Margaret's Chapel, the oldest surviving building in Edinburgh, on the highest point of the rock, confirming the castle as a royal seat. Below the crag, a natural ridge runs eastward, a formation known as the Crag and Tail. This long, tapering strip of land became the foundation of the old town. In the 12th century, David I established the town as one of Scotland's first royal boroughs, promoting trade and giving rise to the city's most famous thoroughfare, the Royal Mile, which runs straight down the ridge from the castle to Holyrood. The medieval city, 4 centuries, Edinburgh's destiny was tied up in the turbulent wars of Scottish independence. The castle changed hands numerous times. In 1314, after the Battle of Bannockburn, Robert the Bruce ordered the castle walls demolished to prevent the English from reoccupying it, though he spared St. Margaret's Chapel. By the 15th century, Edinburgh's growing wealth, port access via Leith, and political importance led to it officially becoming the capital of Scotland, replacing Scone. With the city's new status as capital, its population boomed, yet its physical confines remained stubbornly medieval. In 1513, following the disastrous Scottish defeat at the Battle of Flodden, the city hastily constructed the Flodden Wall to encircle and defend the old town. This wall, parts of which you can still see today, would define the city's geography for over 2 centuries. Trapped on a narrow, volcanic ridge, the growing population had nowhere to go but up. Edinburgh became famous for its lands, some of the world's first high-rise buildings, sometimes reaching 12 stories. The rich lived on the upper floors, closer to the fresh air, while the poor occupied the darker, ground-level slums. The city became infamous for its stench, earning the nickname Old Reeky, Old Smoky, from the smoke of domestic fires and its dreadful sanitation. It was a pressure cooker of people, plague, and politics. The 16th century saw the seismic shift of the Scottish Reformation. John Knox, a key figure in the Presbyterian movement, preached at St. Giles Cathedral, which stood and stands at the heart of the Old Town, next to Parliament House, where the Scottish Parliament met. This was the city of Mary, Queen of Scots, who gave birth to the future King James VI in Edinburgh Castle in 1566. The great constitutional moment came in 1603, the Union of the Crowns. James VI of Scotland inherited the English throne, becoming James I of England. The king left for London, but the Scottish government and separate legal system remained in Edinburgh. While the city lost the king, it kept its political institutions and its character. This political stability did not last. The biggest blow came in 1707 with the Act of Union, when the Scottish Parliament was formally dissolved and merged with the English Parliament in London. The political elite departed, leading to a period of decline and cultural uncertainty. By the mid-18th century, the overcrowded, unsanitary, and gloomy old town was deemed intolerable by the city's wealthy and educated class. Yet, even in the midst of the squalor, a new intellectual vigor was emerging, the Scottish Enlightenment. Figures like philosopher David Hume and economist Adam Smith propelled Edinburgh to the forefront of European thought. To house this intellectual elite and symbolize a new age of reason, the city fathers decided to expand, not organically, but through grand design. This led to the creation of the new town. In 1767, a young, unknown architect named James Craig won the competition to design the new suburb on the flat glacial plain north of the old town. His plan was radically modern, a strict gridiron street pattern with grand parallel thoroughfares like George Street and elegant garden squares like Charlotte Square, later completed by architect Robert Adam. The new town was a complete rejection of the winding, chaotic old town. Built in the neoclassical style with uniform, ashlar-faced stone buildings, it was a physical testament to the Enlightenment's values of order, symmetry, and reason. Its striking contrast with the old town's medieval high-rises, separated by the beautiful Prince's Street gardens on the site of the drain no lock, is what makes Edinburgh unique. The success of the new town cemented Edinburgh's nickname, the Athens of the North, a nod to its intellectual life and its classical architecture, most notably seen in the monuments on Calton Hill. The Victorian era brought massive infrastructure projects, including the completion of the new town extensions and the building of key arteries like George IV Bridge. However, the focus also returned to the preservation and romanticization of the old town. Novelists like Sir Walter Scott popularized Scottish history and the dramatic image of the castle, fueling tourism and national pride. The latter 19th century saw the Victorian improvement movement, which cleared some of the worst slums but also led to the demolition of historic buildings. Architects responded by embracing the Scots baronial style, a romantic revival of medieval Scottish architecture, to give new old town buildings a distinct national character. In the 20th century, Edinburgh shifted away from heavy industry, allowing its historic character to shine. The launch of the Edinburgh International Festival in 1947 firmly established the city as a major global cultural hub. Finally, in 1999, a long-awaited moment of constitutional history arrived, the re-establishment of the Scottish Parliament. Edinburgh was once again the seat of a devolved legislature, reclaiming its full political status. Today, the old and new towns stand together, a stunning visual narrative of nearly 1,000 years of Scottish history, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, where the defensive crag of the medieval fortress guards the planned elegance of the Enlightenment city below. From Din Iding to Auld Reeky, Edinburgh remains the fierce, beautiful, and enduring heart of Scotland. You might know us as the Athens of the North, thanks to our obsession with neoclassical columns and unfinished monuments on Calton Hill. Seriously, we built half a Parthenon just so we could point at it and say, almost. It's like calling your three-legged dog Usain Bolt. It's inspirational, but fundamentally inaccurate. But the real, true, honest nickname is Old Riki. Why? Because for centuries, the medieval city was so choked with smoke from coal fires and, shall we say, sanitary issues, that you could see the smog cloud, the reek, for miles. It was so bad. There's a story that when King George IV visited in 1822, his entire entourage had to walk with their hands cupped over their noses. I'm not saying the air quality was poor, but the only way to get a breath of fresh air was to stand on top of Arthur's seat and pray. And speaking of praying, the most common phrase shouted in the old town used to be Gardez-vous, which is a phonetic corruption of the French God as Lo. Or, watch out for the water. That was the polite warning before people emptied their chamber pots out the window and onto the street below. My family went on a vacation to Edinburgh, and my wife said, "What is that terrible smell?" I said, "Don't worry, darling. That's just the subtle aroma of centuries of social stagnation and human waste wafting up from the Cowgate. It's called heritage." The entire medieval city was crammed onto one ridge, protected by the flood and wall. Everyone was squashed in. The only way to build was up, resulting in our famed lands, some of the world's first skyscrapers, reaching 10, 12, even 14 stories high. This led to the strangest social hierarchy in history. The aristocrats and the wealthy lived on the top floors, where the air was cleanest. The merchants and professionals lived comfortably in the middle. The poor and the service workers lived in the dark, damp, ground floor tenements. Imagine the conversation when the Earl of Glencairn popped in to visit his lawyer on the 4th floor. "Morning, Lord Glencairn. Lovely view today. Did you remember to avoid the laundry basket the Duchess of Athol emptied from the 10th floor this morning? She's got a dreadful arm, you know." The overcrowding was so bad that when the new town was finally built in the 18th century, it was basically the world's most dramatic mass exodus. The rich ran across the newly drained Norloch Valley faster than you can say Gardez-vous. Why was the new town built? Because the old town was a breeding ground for germs, disease, and the occasional riot. It's the only place in the world where being a high roller was a literal description of how rich you were. How can you tell a 17th century Edinburgh aristocrat from a London noble? The Edinburgh noble's family coat of arms is just a picture of a really high fire escape. The new town was built as the architectural embodiment of the Scottish Enlightenment. We had intellectual giants like David Hume and Adam Smith walking around, discussing philosophy and economics. They needed a city as neat and rational as their theories. So, they built a grid. A perfect, symmetrical grid of neoclassical houses. Everything about it screamed order, reason, no more chamber pots. The architects were so pleased with themselves that they named the main streets after the most important people in their lives, the king, the queen, and the royal family. They named the parallel streets George Street and Queen Street. They named the surrounding squares St. Andrew Square and Charlotte Square. And then, for the smallest, most insignificant parallel streets, they named them Thistle Street and Rose Street. Because nothing screams Enlightenment like a passive-aggressive floral metaphor for the two nations. Rose Street, by the way, became famous for its proliferation of pubs. It's safe to say the Enlightenment philosophers were also very fond of a good pint. I asked an old town local for directions to the new town. He squinted at me and said, "Aye, lad, just follow the line of debt collectors and the scent of newly purchased imported lace. You can't miss it." No trip to Edinburgh is complete without talking about the city's most loyal resident, Greyfriars Bobby, the little Skye Terrier who guarded his master's grave for 14 years. It's a beautiful story of devotion, absolutely. But let's be real. Bobby didn't just sit there for 14 years on pure grief. The locals were feeding him. He was getting snacks from the pub owners and the cemetery keeper. Why did Greyfriars Bobby never leave his master's grave? Because he had the best meal ticket in the city. Every night, the pub owner would sneak out with a haggis supper. Bobby was a marketing genius who understood the power of brand loyalty and free food. Finally, we arrive at the very end of the old town, the famous junction marked by the World's End pub. The name comes from the fact that this junction once housed the Netherbow Port, the main city gate. To leave the city, you had to pay a toll, and to get back in, you had to pay again. For the poorest citizens of Edinburgh, the toll was simply too expensive. They genuinely could never afford to leave the city. For them, that gate was literally the final frontier. It was the end of the world. The name sticks today, and when you see those brass bricks marking the old gate in the pavement, remember the sheer drama that little bit of road represented. And what did the citizens of Edinburgh leave behind as they walked past the gallows site, or were forced to stay inside the cramped walls? A famous tradition, spitting on the heart of Midlothian in the pavement, marking the old prison entrance to show contempt for the justice system. A tourist was standing by the heart of Midlothian, and he saw a local spit on it. "Excuse me," said the tourist, "is that some sort of good luck tradition?" The local just wiped his mouth and grumbled, "Nah, mate. It's just contempt for the justice system, and a terrible habit I picked up from a ghost who lived on the 10th floor back in 1650.